Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining our panel today entitled Construction Project Planning, Scheduling, and Higher Education using NetPoint and GPM. My name is Eric Lothar and I'm an executive director at PMA. I spent the past 26 plus years working out of our Boston office, and I have the privilege today to serve as our panel's moderator. Before I introduce our distinguished panel, I thought I'd briefly explain the genesis of this particular session. I'm sure that you've gathered from earlier sessions or any PMA you've met along the way that we're super passionate about our innovation, and we're convinced that our solutions can help improve the industry. And with that motivation, we set out to share those tools and that knowledge with the industry, and that's taken the shape of our user conference, like today's conference, and as well as outreach to industry thought leaders. And that unavoidably has brought us to universities at our nation's leading programs around construction and engineering. And we've met faculty at these universities and developed some close relationships and some great collaboration. And we realized that that might be of value to our user base, and we thought that well, let's have an opportunity for our users to meet some of the folks that we've collaborated with in higher ed. And so that is the genesis of our panel today. And so I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Jerry Klanik, Dr. Ahmed Adabi, and Mr. Tim McManus. And I'd like to turn it over now to each of them to offer some background on their career and their passions around construction and planning. So without further ado, let's start with Dr. Adabi.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to talk in your conference. I'm a clinical professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the Northwestern University, and also the Deputy Director of the Master of Project Management program. I have been teaching scheduling and project control for 33 years at the Northwestern. Actually, I was a student of the Dr. Gee at the University of Michigan in 1988. That shows my age and his age. Anyway, I learned about the NetPoint in 2010, and Dr. Gee graciously provided us with the academic license, and from that time I'm teaching NetPoint in my scheduling course. My scheduling course has a computer component, and I teach both NetPoint and P6 to the students, and they are on this screen a couple of examples of the students' homeworks on NetPoint. My current research is about the application of metaverse in construction industry, and hopefully, I guess one of the things I'm trying to do that they have the NetPoint in the metaverse using for the collaboration meeting. Thank you.
Fantastic. Jerry.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being able to be part of this panel. I'm a little unusual because I can wear multiple hats as part of the panelist. I am still an employee of PMA Consultants. I joined PMA in 1989 and held a number of management roles. At one time was managing director. But in 2020, I shifted from a full-time position at PMA to be a full-time faculty member at the University of Dayton, where my title is faculty of practice, as well as director of our construction engineering and management program. Technically, I'm not a professor on the university mechanism, but my students call me Professor Uncle Jerry because my very first class, I had my niece in the class. And so once I told the class she can call me Professor Uncle Jerry, it stuck. And so that's what my students call me. I have a pretty interesting career in that, I actually went to the University of Dayton as an undergraduate, got a civil engineering degree, and then started off in the project management division of Exxon Research and Engineering. And so I got exposed to project controls, project management theory at Exxon, and got involved in a few projects. Then got my MBA in the mid 80s, and then joined PMA in 1989. And then I have been teaching at UD since 2003 in a part-time capacity, and then shifted to full-time capacity in 2020, just as the pandemic was hitting. Currently, I teach 6 courses in a year. And so most of these courses are upper level courses. I do teach undergraduates in construction engineering, where we expose them to planning and scheduling principles. And then the other higher level courses, which are listed here in the 500 series, these are graduate courses where we expound more on how to do construction management and then bring in the planning and scheduling principles. One of the courses here highlighted is the CE 519 course, which is the risk management for construction projects, which I just recently delivered for the second time this past term. And this is a course where we actually do use NetPoint and NetRisk to solve problems related to a case study. Part of the joy of that course is I bring in a lot of my expertise because I've conducted a lot of risk analysis around the world. And so the passion I have in doing that as a particular exercise in developing a project, it kind of gets shared in the university life. With that, I'm going to turn over to Tim.
Great, thanks, Jerry. In a similar manner as Jerry, in full disclosure, I am a former PMAer as well. And as Eric referenced the Boston office, I had the unique distinction in 1987 of opening up the Boston office. So I'm glad to see it's boomed and has gone so well. I'm currently an adjunct associate professor at Columbia University in the Graduate School of Engineering. I also teach at Northwestern University. I teach the Alternative Delivery Methods course, and I also teach Global Infrastructure Development for Harvard's Graduate School of Design in the Exec Ed program. At Columbia, the courses, I teach a couple different courses, but in addition to my teaching duties, I'm also the industry director for the Global Leaders in Construction Management program. And in that program, we take our top 10 to 15 graduate students, and we conduct thorough research on a variety of topics with companies, just about every major company in the industry, around various topics such as sustainability, decarbonization. The latest one we're doing is looking at digital transformation, since that's such a major topic in the industry right now. As part of our work in the Global Leaders in Construction Management program, my colleague and joint professor who started the program also put together a course in Coursera, an online course teaching construction project management, project scheduling, and control. And we started that in 2017. And since then, we've had over 600,000 people take the course from 190 countries. And every week now, we're seeing another 1,300 to 1,500 new learners taking the course. So we find this as a great way of outreach, of touching people who can't come to campus or can't come to a university, but have access to this kind of knowledge. We also work in different countries. Each year, we take our students to different countries to see how the markets are being conducted there. We've gone to 10 different countries and looking to move forward to to another country, probably next January and February with our students. But thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Okay, well, Tim and Jerry as well, have a foot in both industry and academia, and kind of gives you some unique insights into kind of how the industry drives, preparing, the information of what's required from graduates. And so, Tim, what are you seeing in the industry, and how is that making its way back to academia and into your courses?
Well, it's a good question, Eric. As you and I have talked many times, one of the things I try to do with any of my classes is put in perspective, what is the global construction industry about, right? So it's important to look at this as a motion picture, not as a snapshot. Mm. And when you look at the global construction industry, it's about a $12 to $14 trillion capital spend a year. That represents about 13% of global GDP. So it's one of the largest ecosystems in the world. However, when you peel away, the first layer and you look at it, the performance in our industry is pretty poor, right? When I was at McKinsey, we did a study evaluating mega project performance. And what we saw with mega projects is that on average, they experienced about a 60% delay compared to the original schedule and about a 70% overrun in budget. And when we looked at the issues causing that, it went from organizational issues, technology issues, execution, project delivery methods, financing issues. But one of the other things that we studied was how productivity since World War II has stayed virtually flat in the United States. And when you look at that compared to every other major industry, it's been pretty poor. Every other major industry has increased their productivity significantly, seeing tremendous benefits. But the construction industry has stayed very intensive. It's the most fragmented industry that we have. If you look at the United States alone, there are 710,000 engineering and construction companies in the industry. Only 2% of those companies have over 100 employees. So it's a very fragmented industry, a lot of small companies that don't make investments. And when we looked at the productivity profile, one of the reasons we saw the productivity stayed flat there's a variety of reasons, but we also saw that there has been a very, very low investment of our industry in technology or digital solutions and research and development. A lot of that is driven, I think, because margins are so thin for construction companies as well as engineering companies. But what I also think that I try to explain to my students is that when you look at our industry right now, there are 5 generations in our industry. My generation has run most of the companies, run most of the major companies. My generation did not grow up with technology like my children's generation did, or the students who are coming off campus now to come into the industry. So there's been a hesitancy in the older generations to adopt technology solutions, to make investments in technology, and that's impacted our industry. But now, as we're seeing these waves of new generations moving up into leadership positions, we're seeing a tremendous advancement in technology and in construction. We're seeing the adoption of methods like NetPoint and NetRisk in ways that have never happened before. And we're seeing billions of dollars being invested in small tech startups, in a much higher degree than what we've seen before. So I think, when I see, my perspective overall is that the generational movement that's adopting technology and bringing technology to the industry will move very quickly. And I think companies that adopt it will be the first movers, and we'll see the benefits in a very significant way.
Awesome. Jerry, you want to add to that?
Hey, I'm going to go a little different direction than Tim. I'm going to look at it from, placing students into companies post graduation, as well as when they're in their training and getting like internships or co-op positions. And so I'm going to deal with the first one is in terms of entry-level positions, whether they're graduate students or undergraduate students. It's certainly that there's an expectation that students have a good knowledge of what a schedule is and how to put together a good schedule. And because many times they're getting in roles like an assistant to the field leader or assistant to the project manager as a project engineer, field engineer. And so those types of skills really would help them in those positions. And so there's an expectation that they have the understanding of all the algorithms behind doing good planning and scheduling, and then, being able to use the tools. And, one of the things that we try to do in some of the classes that I've been teaching is showing them a variety of the tools. Some people use them Microsoft Project, some people use Primavera. I show them NetPoint to show a different perspective of what a NetPoint output looks like, as opposed to other variations, to see what the value of each. Now, what I learned yesterday, we had a faculty meeting, and when this came up, is that we really need to force down some of this training on planning and scheduling to like sophomores and juniors or second or third year students, because they are getting positions of being an intern or a co-op. And a lot of these positions actually, they get involved in building schedules or actually doing estimates as well. And so some of those skills we're now rethinking that we need to push down some of the fundamentals in those topics to prepare those students to do well in those internship and co-op opportunities.
Well, that's interesting. Dr. Hadavi.
I am a member of the several association like the American Society of Civil Engineers, the American Association for the Cost Engineers, and the Construction Management Association of America, and the Society for the Military Engineers. And therefore, I usually attend their meetings and then get the feedback about that what they need the people to know. What are the skilled competencies that they require? And therefore, I adjust my teaching based on that the feedback that I receive from industry professionals, that what they want the students know, or when they wanted to interview them, hire them, they ask them the certain skills, and if they know those skills, then that's something that I try to provide for them.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, Jerry. Yeah.
Just as Dr. Davies mentioned something, just struck me. One of the things I did this past term was work with students to prepare them for their first, professional engineering exam. It's called the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. It used to be called the EIT in my days. And in the preparation material that they have, they are still teaching the arrow diagram method of scheduling. And so the expectation is really, really low at the moment of what they need to know, which is kind of surprising to me. And I think there's the whole industry needs to kind of elevate what they really want the students to know in their undergraduate and graduate studies in this field, because the expectation, at least as it declared in the preparation of that exam, is quite archaic.
Yeah, clearly, and you think about where we're leaving something on the table in terms of, Tim mentioned the lack of project outcomes, the non-desirable project outcomes. It would seem that that those outcomes are highly influenced by our schedule and cost disciplines, and so when it comes to the investment that Tim talked about, it makes a lot of sense that that's where it should be happening. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to our next question. So, what are some of the software and tools that you're using in the classroom to teach planning and scheduling? Dr. Hadavi, why don't you take that?
As I mentioned earlier, I use that the Oracle Primavera P6 and the NetPoint in my project scheduling class. I have told them that they can, we have access to the touch plan for the last planner scheduling also, and just make an introduction on that. But this is that these two softwares are the ones that they learn in the computer lab and do their projects on that program. They learn to create the project, add activities, create the critical path, evaluate the schedule, do the resource loading, and prepare the resource histogram. And so therefore, these are the type of work that they do. They do with a small project and with the two large projects, one about the 50 activities, one about the 200 activities.
Okay. Professor Klanik.
Yes, I try to use a variety of tools for the students, like you mentioned before, to give them exposure to different things. The base plan in terms of the two undergraduate courses where we've done planning and scheduling, the one project is actually a bridge project consisting around 45 activities. The other project is a wind farm project where you're installing 5 wind turbine generators and all the infrastructure to support it. And so I have them plan out the flow of logic for those projects, as well as then build the CPM schedule using Microsoft Project. Now, the alternative that I have used in some deliveries of these courses is to bring NetPoint in as the tool to build the schedule. And when I do that, I have to explain the difference between GPM and CPM so that they understand the tool. Now, the biggest course where I've really have advanced use of NetPoint and NetRisk is the risk management course that I recently taught. We have one case study where it's a project that I actually worked on many years ago in Houston, Texas, which was a high performance computing center for a client that we had. And so what we have is a kind of a schedule of the project that the students then have to convert into a schedule risk model, which we have them do that in NetPoint, and it's around 30 to 35 activities in there. And then there's information in the case study to take that particular schedule model and then transfer it into NetRisk, and then add all the information on risk effects to that schedule. So there's the variation on the activity durations. There's a couple of discrete risk events that can happen. And then I introduced the key concept of the possibility of floating or float use into that schedule and what that may do in the envelope of outcomes that could happen from the simulation results that you get. And so the whole exercise there is to build the model, run the simulation, and then interpret the results. And students really love getting their hands on new tools and doing something different than what they've seen before. They now realize the importance of doing a schedule risk analysis, knowing that there is possibility of different outcomes than what is shown in the base schedule, which is deterministic based. And they're somewhat surprised at how much change into the outcome completion date could be with all the risks come into play. So it's actually a really good exercise.
Jerry, I think you mentioned that you do teach some master's levels courses, and I imagine some of those students are working. Do you ever have reports of them bringing this back, their insights back to their work and providing that feedback?
Not yet, because I'm a little bit in my infancy in my tenure as a full-time professor. So some of the students only been out maybe like one term. I did get feedback from one student where he said he was very well prepared for what he was doing as a field engineer on some of the work that's going on in Columbus, Ohio, related to the Intel semiconductor building there. But he hadn't really applied, for example, NetRisk, but he did said he was using NetPoint, so that was encouraging.
That's exciting. I'm curious about those assignments. Are those generally individual or team assignments? How do you approach that?
It's meant to be individual by individual, but I have no problem in students working together. They still need to submit their own work. Usually, for this example I gave of building this schedule risk model, is I usually have a special study session because they usually try it and maybe they get like 80% there and they're struggling about it. Some of the fine details of doing this, and so having that additional session has proven to be very valuable for the success. But the idea is that they do it individually, but I know they work in pairs.
Right. And Tim, in your classes, you emphasize a lot of team projects, or is it more individual stuff?
No, what we do, Eric, in each of my classes, I have students pair up, and as opposed to just staying in the classroom for the entire semester, I have them pick a certain project in New York or Boston, like new Terminal 1 at JFK Airport, Newark Airport, East Side Access, new JP Morgan headquarters, Green Line extension, something like that, and study the project, meet with the project team, meet with the owner, meet with the contractor, understand what tools they're using for scheduling, risk management, et cetera, look at what the outcomes are, and then present the project back to the class. And one of the great correlations that I've tried to teach them, and they kind of learn it as they go through this process, is that regardless of the tools that you're using, what are you doing with the data? What are you doing with the information that's coming out of it? How good is the information that comes out of a P6 report? Is it understandable, or is it just 10,000 activity network that nobody really understands, but I got to do a monthly update anyway, so I'll do it. So we've tried to show them that to make that correlation between the tools and what comes out of that and how it gets communicated to be usable information. And that's one of the things Jerry and I were talking about last week about NetPoint, is that it's a very friendly, user-friendly tool where it gives you the great pictorials that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to be a P6 expert or, Primavera jockey in order to know it, to see it. It gives you those answers. And I think that's what the important part is. It's interesting when you look at data, our industry is so interesting because every other industry, like I talked about, has made investments in technology, but our industry has not. Our industry is not advanced in data analytics either. And when you look at, if you watch a basketball game, you watch a Celtics game, you watch a Yankee game, watch whatever game you want, we're bombarded with data, right? Every industry in the world has taken data analytics to a new level. FMI and Autodesk did a study a little while ago looking at the use or lack of use of data in the construction industry. And they thought that by using bad data in the construction industry, coming out of bad reports, it could cause up to $1 to $2 trillion of additional costs because we're not using data properly. So by developing certain tools, whether it's NetRisk, whether it's NetPoint, that makes it easy to get the information out and what the results are, that's key to managing a capital project.
Awesome. Well, that's kind of a great segue, I think, for our next question, which is, what innovations do you foresee in teaching around planning and scheduling? So how are we going to use those new technologies and that new advancement in the classroom? So Jerry, you want to take the first whack at that one?
There's a couple of things, from my perspective that we're looking at for doing things innovative. For example, this year, for the first time, we actually had a building information modeling or BIM course that was taught by another faculty member, and it was well received and well attended course. A lot of students were really keen, and seeing the output of that, it's recognized that we need to do more in taking the BIM model and doing what they call the 4D approach, which brings schedule information so they can really see how it's being built over time. And so the next kind of cycle of doing that course, we're gonna try to enhance that, and it's definitely an area of great interest to students to do, as well as great application of planning and scheduling. One of my dreams at the University of Dayton, and I'm looking for a donor to get this new lab, but what we would like to have is some sort of planning hub in the one of the faculty, or excuse me, one of the laboratory areas that we have on our on campus. And so this would be a hub where we would have the appropriate software, and NetPoint would be perfect for this, where students as well as faculty and staff can work in a collaborative environment to build a schedule or a plan together, and see it kind of live in a room. And then once you're done, you're going to be able to disseminate it appropriately, whether it's a hard copy or software. And I think this is kind of a way to go and bring into the classroom the concept of of the benefits of collaborative planning, and seeing different ideas and testing things out, doing what if scenarios once you build the plan would be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I would say that that concept would be pretty transformative to someone beginning in the planning industry. Too often, one or two people go off in a room by themselves and try to develop a schedule, and it really is a collaborative effort around a much larger group of subject matter experts. And but the trick of kind of choreographing and collaborating with all of those SMEs is something that's learned over time, but and it's not taught, I don't think, currently in most programs. So I think that's pretty exciting. Great idea. Dr. Hadavi, what are you excited about in terms of innovation in your curriculum?
I think that there is a direction going with the AI that be combined with the 4D scheduling, and I guess one of the leading companies that they started, and there will be more companies, was the Alice Technologies, and I think there will be more startups that working on that similar type of problems to have a better schedules and better cost management and project control for the construction projects. The other things that I see that there are a number of new softwares for last planner scheduling, or for IPD projects coming, like the Niali touch plan, refine my site, and I think there will be more of those also that coming, and the people will be interested to learn and come when the industry using those, then we have to get into teaching those softwares or platforms. Another thing is that for collaboration meeting would be that the softwares that would be, I guess, working on the touch screen mode, that then that will make it that the people on a fly look at that, take the bar and move it around and see that what would be the impact and so on. Therefore, these are the things that I see for the future of the research and in both the academia and the industry.
Awesome. Yeah, you know, there's quite a bit of excitement around the AI advancement that's happening of late. And Tim, you know, what have you seen? What have you studied in the industry around those advancements?
Yeah, what's really interesting, Eric, I've seen a couple of things. One of the things I've been reading Flybird's new book, you know, How Big Things Get Done. Yeah, I love reading whatever he puts out. And he made a really great point in there that a lot of people focus on when a project starts, okay, how do we monitor it and control it, go forward? And everyone rush, let's go. But very little time and effort gets put into the planning phase. And I tell all my students, that's the most important foundational element of a project is your planning phase. Get your budget right, get your schedule right, learn from history. So what I try to encourage my students to do, and what I've seen a lot of, is how do we leverage data right now? If you look at all the projects we do, I dare say any of us have been involved in a project that has never been done before. You know, whether it's a rail system, a wastewater treatment plant, a school, a hospital, whatever it is, it's all been done before. But how do we leverage the knowledge and experience of those previous projects that have been done? What went wrong? What went right? How did it go over schedule? How do we incorporate that within, whether by using AI or some machine learning, and incorporate a global lessons learned workshop in order to apply that in the planning phase for a job going forward. So we get the forecast right, so we get the schedule right, so we get the base budget right, not just the wish that nobody can really live up to. And once again, we have another project over budget, another project over schedule.
Right. You really have to hold fire on what that target date and dollar is, right? Until you really have a good understanding of what that is, because that first number, it sticks.
Yeah, it's rightly or wrongly, you know, but everyone, and engineers don't like to tell people no. So, okay, great, I'll get that, we'll go. And everyone say, put a shovel in the ground. You know, we're working right now with the largest contractor in Saudi Arabia to develop a customized training program in project management, project controls, and project scheduling for their people for large capital projects, for mega projects, because the Middle East and KSA is, you know, renowned for their mega projects. And it's a much different element when you get involved at that level. But I think, you know, we've all been zoomed out, you know, here we are doing another Zoom, right? But we've all been zoomed out over the last 3 years. But I think some of the good out of that is that now we can develop customized research or training programs or educational programs for people in whatever country you're in, and put it to good use. And you can access experts like Dr. Adavi, like Jerry, like yourself, without physically having to be there.
Right. Fantastic. Does anybody else want to jump in on that before we move on to? We've got some questions posed by the audience. I thought we might move on to those. So one question for Tim. Tim, in explaining kind of the underperformance of the construction industry, you talked about the fragmentation of builders and small engineering companies. And so the question kind of relates to that. I mean, does that also apply to our owners? You know, and you know, they ultimately bear a big brunt of the cost and the impact of the delays and damages that happen on projects. Do you think that helps explain why that happens there as well? Or
yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, when you look at the owner side of our industry, I'll give you a great example. We did a study that did a couple of years ago, we showed that there were 2,400 mega projects in the world, growing up to 4,000 by 2030. When I did a soft assessment of those 2,400 mega projects, leadership on the owner side was bereft. It was, I would say, maybe 60% of those programs had adequate leadership. When we studied the reasons for those overruns of budget and schedule before, one of the leading indicators was proper leadership and organization. And when you look at leading a project, it's not just about technology, it's not just about engineering, it's not just about construction, it's communication, it's stakeholders, it's regulators, it's leadership. And our industry does not grow a lot of leaders. Our industry grows a lot of people to do work, but not to lead work. And when you look on the owner side, particularly in the public sector right now, you know, you and I talked about this last month, where you have so many agencies making a declaration that says, we're going to do all of our projects over $5 million using design build, whether we're ready or not. You know, we're going to continue to transfer risk to our contractors, whether we think that's a good idea or not. So this idea of unbalanced risk on owners or by owners, I think is one of the leading indicators or leading causes of bad performance in our industry, because it's not set up for success. When you look at alliance contracting that's been used around the world, being used up in Canada, being used in Australia in a very, very successful manner, having a success rate of about 98%. You look, why can't owners here in the United States adopt something like that in a much more collaborative contracting method to achieve success, shared success? You know, one of the papers I wrote for McKinsey, I said, one of the keys to success is make your contractors successful. You know, they don't have to lose for me to win, but a lot of owners don't have that same sense or understanding.
Interesting. You kind of spoke about the industry's inability to effectively create leaders. I'm wondering, you know, have you done any research about the coming generations and their interest in our industry? Are we fighting two battles? The battle of failure to kind of produce leaders in the industry, but also a lack of interest and talent in the industry?
I don't think it's a lack of interest. Jerry brought up a really good point before, the benefits of students getting, you know, various work assignments or a rotational program or taking trainee jobs, or, you know, getting the fundamentals right. Yeah. Unfortunately, what I see with a lot of the generations that are coming out of school now, they don't want to put the time in to learn the fundamentals and learn the detail. They want to move up to be the head of project controls. They don't want to just be a scheduler, you know? So I think they're missing that foundational element that will set them up for success. If you look at a lot of companies like Skanska or Turner or Bechtel, they'll take their new grads, put them through a very comprehensive training and development program that gives them exposure to estimating, to scheduling, to procurement, risk management in a very effective way. And that helps grow that talent in a very real way. But a lot of companies, a lot of contractors are not doing that.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, if you want to add to that, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah, you know, what I'm seeing is, you know, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, the percentage of undergrad students that were pursuing initial career in construction, maybe it was 35, 40%. That has now risen to more like 60%, at least at the University of Dayton. There are a lot of students see construction as a good, you know, first, you know, job entry. And from a standpoint of those that connect with the university to, in essence, harvest students that we have, the career fairs that we have are oversubscribed by companies wanting students with construction background. The last one, we had at least 25 firms looking for undergraduate students, whether it's an internship or a new hire upon graduation. So I think there's a recognition, there's a lot of talent that, you know, that's out there, and then also an interest from these students to get into construction.
Awesome. Okay, one of the other questions that we received from the audience is, what do we think the major challenges will be for our industry moving forward? So major challenges. Dr. Hadavi, any thoughts on what you think some future challenges will be?
I think that we need more companies that they invest in technology. For example, there are companies like that, DPR and Suffolk and similar, that they invest a portion of their revenue in the technology. They support some startups, and then they took the shares of those startups. And then when they were successful, they were, I guess, a spin-off those. Therefore, those, I guess, not come just as individuals or so. This would be a thinking way that gets little by little into the industry. And when others see that they are spending money on research and development, and they are successful with the new technology, then some other companies would follow. The other thing is that I think a major burden is on the public agencies and the state agencies, that they push or they provide some incentives for the contractors in order that they get into the new technology. We see that in scheduling specifications that they specify that you must use such and such software, and you have to provide this type of reports. The contractor will charge it to the agency because of their cost. That will be included. But if the public agencies right now asking for the BIM model, then if they ask for something more, therefore that will somehow would increase the use of technology, and hopefully it will improve the productivity in the construction industry.
Interesting. Okay, and then the next question from the audience is another interesting kind of take on the advancement of technology. So, we do have new tools that will quickly offer schedule and/or cost forecasts on projects, and so the question is, what's the professional judgment? What's the requirement of project controls professionals to kind of QA/QC and react to and provide assurance to some of these tools? It seems like that might be a potential exposure if software tools produce answers and we put them into place without adequate vetting. Jerry, you have a thought on that?
I mean, certainly it's a challenge. Whenever you have some sort of application tool, et cetera, that is relatively new, you have to assure that it's working properly. And I think, in hindsight, looking over things over the years, we've always seen like, oh, well, this is a new release of a certain package, and yeah, it's like 85% is fantastic, but there's still like 10% bugs, and you have to work around the bugs, whatever they are, or subsequent releases will improve it. I'm always wondering whether it's a schedule or an estimate. Is you got to be careful not getting lost in the details, but always see kind of the big picture and have a test is what you're seeing in the ballpark or what you're expecting. And if you don't have those comparisons to do, then you're actually kind of flying a little blind, and you're at the mercy of what that tool can do for you. So, certainly if you have something new, the more you can do to calibrate to make sure it gives you the answer, close to what you're looking for. You get confidence that it's a legitimate tool, then you can move forward. But it's really as dangerous if you don't do that.
Dr. Adavi mentioned the reality of many projects that, I'm sorry, Tim, before I move on, you have something you want to add on that?
Yeah, no, I just want to follow up on what Jerry was talking about, because one of the things, tools and systems are tools and systems, and they will, work as they will. But what I try to encourage people and students to use is what does it mean? So what? You generate a report coming out of this. What does it mean within the context of a larger project? how is this affecting productivity, procurement, quality, what are the issues, and be able to answer those questions, not just say, here's what the report says. And I think that goes to the training aspect. As we develop more technology solutions for all parts of our industry, what I tell companies, and what I did when I was at McKinsey, we explained to them very clearly, there's a whole new training regime for people to take these roles. Don't just take someone from, someone's in IT and they know computers, so let's make them, the head of data analytics. No, it's a completely different discipline. And I think as we look at the advancement of technology, we've got to make sure that people are trained for these new roles. The labor industry showed that the top 10 jobs that will be in place in the next 5 years don't exist right now. So these are all new skills that have to be taught and people have to be ready for.
That's interesting.
That the people or the students need to know the theory behind all these the software and the tools in order that they be able to use those software and tools. Without the knowledge that what's in the, I guess, a black box in the behind the software or other aspects of it, I guess they will get the wrong answers, and they will provide that the wrong solutions. Therefore, one of the things is that, as Tim also mentioned, that the issue is that we need to teach them that how to use the tools and how they use their judgment in the interpretation of the results of the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. So, Dr. Davi, in one of your remarks earlier, you mentioned the reality of schedule specifications, for example, that list particular softwares. I mean, those requirements can be a barrier for the adoption of new technology, new innovation. Does anybody on the panel have any other examples of particular barriers in our industry that would prevent or slow the adoption of some of these new things?
I would just go back to what I said earlier, Eric, that I think this, the 5-generation factor in our industry, it's a major barrier. So I think, as this new generation or new generations move up through leadership, that's always going to be a constant battle. If I hear one more time, why do I have to adopt that tool? I've done it like this for the last 25 years and it's been fine, Right. But I think that's one key factor. I think this underinvestment by companies, in our industry, we all love buzzwords. Every 3 to 5 years, we have a new buzzword: alternative delivery, sustainability, decarbonization. The one now is, digital transformation. Everyone talks about it. Everyone wants to do it. Nobody invests the proper levels to do it. And the few companies that have, like a Bechtel or a couple or Suffolk, who have made those investments in technology, have seen the benefits and have driven, their profits in a very significant way. Sure. So this underinvestment, I think, is one of the biggest barriers to adoption of technology.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up the questions that we've received. Does anybody have any parting thoughts that they'd like to share? Jerry, you want to go first?
Yeah. One of the things, and it kind of goes back to the major challenges. Yeah, I'm working with a group of people in Ohio. It's called the Cogence Alliance, and it's a way where owners, designers, contractors, and others that touch projects can have a forum and meet and talk about issues that are out there. And the ones that come up currently, I'm going to use the word shortage is the word. There's a shortage of materials. Some of our supply chains are still not back to where they were prior to the pandemic. And who knows when they're going to be fixed. Okay. There's a shortage of construction labor. So they're trying to find out how can we do innovative ways to build things and not use as many people on the site. And last is there's a shortage of people that are involved in the development and execution of projects, shortage on owner staffs, designer staffs, construction management staffs. And so we're trying to do a lot of projects, and the resource pool isn't that prolific that everything that's on the boards can actually get done effectively. So that's a big challenge.
Tim?
I think this shortage may become something that creates the need for better technology or the more robotics or other tools and systems that will, I guess, reduces these shortages. Therefore, we can look at it as something that delays the construction work, or we have a large infrastructure build that I guess the project have been delayed because there's not enough resources and the people, so managers, project managers, and others to do the projects. But it might be a way that this shortage be a blessing that increases the investment in technology and the new ways to do the job.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah,
Tim,
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Even the last report I saw from the AGC, I think they said that there are 500,000 construction job openings across the country. 500,000 that's going to slow projects down, right? The other comment I would make, just as a wrap up, Eric, when we talk about planning a project at the beginning phase, I encourage my students and my clients, I said, you need to define what success means for your project. And success for a project does not necessarily just mean being completed on time or on budget. It talks about, do we create jobs for our local community where the project is? Do we create some sort of legacy benefit? Do we work closely with the community that we're in? Do we advance technology and use this as a laboratory to advance our technology or understanding? So encouraging people to define success in very broad categories like that, I think is very important in addition to developing the plan and schedule for an overall project.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, panels, for your great insights.